You're good to go.
Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 5:30. I would like to review the norms for those who do not have a copy of the agenda. These are meeting norms and they apply to everyone participating in the meeting. 1, keep the best interests of the school and children in mind while balancing the needs of the taxpayers. 2, make decisions based on clear information. 3, honor the board's decisions. 4, keep meetings short and on time. 5, stick to the agenda. 6, keep remarks short and to the point. 7, everyone gets a chance to talk before people take a second turn. And 8, respect others and their ideas. So I just would like to trying to remind everybody that those are the norms that we're following when we have our full board meetings as well as our committee meetings. With that, I'll also go over public comments. If there's anything on the agenda that you would like to speak about, please, we'll give you 2 minutes to speak. You can put your name, where you're from, and the agenda item in the chat. If there's something that you'd like to speak about that's not on the agenda, please feel free to put your name and your town that you're from, and then put 3.1 public comment, or if you're a student, 3.2 student voice. And those are the times that we will have you participate. If you have any questions, please just, you can put it in the chat. You could raise your hand. I'll do my best to get questions answered. Does anyone know, oh, hold on. I just want to check to see if, yep, Gina's here. Okay, great. So moving on, number 2, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Guy.
Thanks, Guy. In a second.
I'll second, Gina.
Thanks, Gina. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Chris Parker?
Thanks. Yes, item 5.5, the first reading of student attendance. There's been some folks who have contacted me not feeling ready to present this to the board yet. And so I would like to request that we take that off the agenda for tonight and that it go back to committee. So we can resolve and make sure everyone's on the same page first.
Okay. Is that okay with Guy and who seconded? Gina? I'm sorry, I forgot.
Sonia?
Yes.
Because it's on the agenda, I would suggest making that comment under that agenda item and just say the board has decided to send it back to committee.
Okay. Okay. So we'll do that when we get there, Chris, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Seconded.
Okay. Any other additions or deletions? The only addition I have, I'd like to add a negotiations update in executive session, so 10.3. And I have nothing else other than that. So I would look for all those in favor to please signify with a thumbs up, and I'll give the roll call. Guy, Abby, Alice, Chris, Sarah, Tim, Renee, and Gina. Perfect. So the agenda is approved, and we'll move on to public comment. It looks like Josh Howard would like to speak for public comment. So Josh, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is for Chris Hennessy. Just following up on that seatbelt thing, why kids aren't allowed to wear seatbelts on buses. Haven't heard anything from it for a while.
Okay. I will ask Chris to follow up with you outside of the meeting so that we don't get into a long discussion about something that's not on the agenda. But thank you for your question.
Josh, I do have an update. I'll get that right to you this evening.
Okay. So it looks like there's no one else for public comment. So we'll move on to student voice. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak for student voice who hasn't had a chance to sign up? Okay, hearing none. We will move on. The next item on the agenda is item number 4, and that's the consent agenda. And we are approving just one set of minutes. So I would look for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from September 9th. Tim is giving me a thumbs up. I'll take that as a first. Anyone for a second? Chris is giving me a hands up. Thanks, Chris. Okay, any discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Guy, Abby, Alice, Chris, Sarah, Tim, Renee, and Gina. Perfect. The consent agenda and the minutes are approved. Moving on, 5.1 is new hires, and I believe there's just one new hire in your packet, and that came in the addendum. And Chris, would you like to talk to us about that?
Yes, this is from your blissfully short addendum that you got yesterday. We have got a replacement for 5th grade at Barrytown. We are absolutely overjoyed to have this person join the team. Her name is Christy Bandelin. Christy is a longtime paraeducator and super sub at Barrytown, who was actually working and teaching in the Philippines before returning back home. She joined Barrytown, if I'm correct, very recently to be a super sub again, and has thrown her hat in the ring to be to join the 5th grade team. We are thrilled to have her join us. She's a longtime community member, well known in the Bobcat community, and I can speak for Erica Pearson. Absolutely thrilled. She's going to be jumping into this position.
So I will look for a motion to approve Christy Bandelin.
So moved, Guy.
Thanks, Guy. In a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Sarah. Are there any questions? Chris, I have one question on the new hire notification form. The teacher AOE endorsement, yes or no, is not circled.
Yep. Christy is going to need to, she's in the process of applying for a provisional license, and looking at all of her materials. We don't anticipate there being any trouble for her to get that provisional.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other questions, Tim?
Yeah, as down as our enrollment is, are we absolutely sure we need this body?
We are absolutely sure we need this position. We've been having Mr. Mills, our assistant principal, teaching English in the 5th grade, and the numbers aren't down significantly to that degree in the middle school at Barrytown. It's also a licensure issue. We need to have somebody specializing in ELA. So strongly recommend we fill this position, as Mr. Mills has been filling it for the first 3.5 weeks of school.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Guy? Thank you. Abby? Alice? Chris? Sarah? Tim? Renee? And Gina. Perfect. Thank you. Well, welcome to the team, Christy. Next on the agenda is resign retire. I don't see anything in the packet for resign retire, so we'll actually just move right on to 5.
Thank heavens, I would add.
Yes. We'll move on to 5.3, which is in your packet an MOU regarding payroll for 2021-2022. Chris, would you like to speak to this, or Lisa?
I can try to speak to it. And Lisa, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but every 6 or 7 years or so, the way the calendar works, there are 27 pay periods as opposed to 26. What this does is it simply stretches out the contract over one extra pay period. As I understand it, Lisa, what happens with that is for the 27th pay period, there are no deductions taken out to even it all out. But typically what happens is that we just do an MOU to just make sure that it's all on the up and up with the association, and it's pretty standard procedure. Did I miss anything, Lisa?
No, it's actually every 11 years or so. So it's a little, less frequent, which is good. And we actually spoke with the Labor Relation Committee just to make sure that they were okay with going with the 27 pay periods as opposed to skipping a paycheck. And this is what they agreed to. So this is really just, making sure that the agreement is signed and sealed.
Okay. I would look for a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding as presented in our packet.
So moved.
Sarah, thank you.
Second, Gina.
Second.
Abby, I think. Thanks.
Was that Abby?
I think it was Abby.
Okay.
Um,
I have one question on the motion.
yes.
I'm not sure who's going to sign it, and I didn't know if you needed to approve the MOU and authorize X person to sign.
Oh, that's a good question. Who needs to sign it for the district?
I didn't know if it was you or the superintendent. So.
Well, it was last done 11 years ago. I don't know if we have any precedent here. We can certainly look. I am more than happy to sign it, though, for sure.
Okay. So can we amend the motion to include giving the superintendent permission to sign on behalf of the district? Sarah, is that okay with you as the mover and Abby as a second? Yeah, okay. Sarah, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
I do. I just wanted to double check. Is this being signed by the teachers union? And if so, do we need separate ones for the para contract and the custodians as well?
Oh, good question. Chris might be answering the door. Lisa, can you help us?
No, we don't, because it doesn't affect people who are paid hourly. It's only the salary positions.
Okay, good question. Thanks, Sarah. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the memorandum and authorizing Chris to sign on behalf of the district, please signify with a thumbs up. Guy, yes. Abby, yes. Alice, yes. Chris, yes. Sarah, yes. Tim, yes. Renee, yes. And Gina, yes. Perfect. So that has been approved, and we will move on to the next item on the agenda. 5.4 is a recommendation on policy F20, fiscal management and general financial accountability. And it looks like Josh Howard would like to speak to this. Josh, I'm going to have Chris present this first, and then I'll give you your opportunity to speak. Chris Parker or Chris Hennessy, would one of you like to speak?
If I could just jump in quickly, I just want to let folks know we have 2 members of the public who just joined us. I'm having them just put their names down. Andrea, I'll share those with you in just a moment. Okay, so you just give me a second here.
Sure.
And Chris, obviously, if you want to jump in the meantime, feel free.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So in the policy meeting on August 16th, the committee discussed this policy, and this is a policy that currently is in place and was adopted in 2019 when the districts merged. This was one of the batch policies that all got adopted together. And there has been a recent change in the law that is changing the threshold for bids. But in this policy, for bids that work is going to be done in the district, from 15,000, that was the old threshold, to the new threshold of 40,000. And so the committee is recommending that the threshold requiring board approval remain at $15,000. And therefore, the policy as it is written could remain in place because we don't wish to make any changes. We'd like to leave that threshold of board approval at $15,000.
So, excuse me, my understanding is you're basically recommending that we keep the policy as it is and do not make any changes to it.
Yes, in the guidelines section, the key line is expenditures in excess of $15,000 require approval by the board, and we would like to keep it that way.
Okay. So before we get started on discussion, I see Lisa has her hand up and Sarah and Guy. Before we start board discussion, I'm going to open this up for Josh Howard, who had indicated that he would like to have public comments. So Josh Howard, if you'd like to go ahead, you have 2 minutes.
All right. Well, I do appreciate that policy is staying the same. I think the 15 grand is definitely a good benchmark to have discussion about. And fiscal responsibility to me is very, very important. And I actually just had a question for you, Sonia, about the last superintendent as to, was he fired or did he leave on his own? And I know in Washington Central, they ended up paying off the superintendent a bunch of money, and they made that public as they should, because that's the responsible, honest thing to do. I wonder if we had the same thing.
Okay, thanks for your comment. So now I'd look for a motion I guess we can open it up for discussion, because if the rest of the board would like to have to change this, we would have to, I don't know, send it back to policy or, so I guess I'm just going to open it up for the comments, the people that have their hands raised. Lisa, go ahead.
Thank you. So originally I brought this policy along with our purchasing procedure to the finance committee in August to discuss the fact that the threshold had increased. And it is a requirement now that we must go out to bid and seek 3 qualified bids for anything over $40,000. So, this has been something that we've been working on with Jeff Francis at VSA, the Vermont Superintendents Association, the Vermont School Boards Association, because $15,000 is a very low threshold. And so after a few years, the legislature, realized that there's a lot involved in running school districts, especially one the size of Barry. And that when you look at an agenda that, for example, like you have tonight, for the board to have to approve expenditures of $15,000 really is not a good, in my opinion, necessary or a good use of our board's time. And this only applies to, construction, purchase, lease, or improvement of school buildings, purchase or lease of any items required for supplies, equipment, maintenance, repair, transportation. And so, this is in instructional supplies. But I think that, you have, I think that there's some confidence in your administration, your facility director, your business manager, your superintendent, to manage costs of, expenditures that cost $40,000. I think that, we all know costs of materials have skyrocketed, and a project, this includes labor and material. And so you're not going to do much of anything for less than, for $15,000. So I would appreciate, I wasn't at the policy committee, and that's my own fault. I didn't realize this was going on that particular day. But I would appreciate it if the board would just hold off on approving this policy. And, I've also reached out to many of my colleagues, and they don't even have a policy where the board has to approve expenditures over 15 or 40,000. It's administrative discretion. So I would appreciate if we could come back to this policy at another time.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. I was actually, in addition to what Lisa had said, we had a conversation at facilities with Jamie Evans, and it is completely my fault. I missed this on the agenda, but he wanted to speak on this policy as well, because of the same reasons that Lisa had mentioned. And I told him that I would let him know when it was on the agenda, and I did not. And I see that he's not here. So I would actually like to make a motion that we table this until a future date when he can be here and present his ideas on it as well.
Okay. So at this point, Tim?
Ordinarily in a normal time, I might say this is okay. The problem that we have right now is we have an interim person in the superintendent position. And we also have this surplus of money that's driving everybody bananas. I would say let's keep it like it is, because this will calm the spirits of those who are really concerned about the out of control administration.
Okay. So Sarah, I appreciate your motion, but because there's lack of a second, I can't, we can't table it. Or even
Sonia, I see that Guy also has his hand raised.
Yeah, and Guy had his hand raised, so I apologize that I called on Tim first, but I thought Tim might be seconding the motion, so that's why I called on Tim. Guy, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'm going to second the motion, but my comment pretty much follows what Lisa said. If I remember correctly, and I guess maybe this is why maybe we can table this, is I think the $15,000 threshold has been part of policy for quite some time. So for reasons that Lisa spoke to, I guess I would certainly like to know a little bit more about that. What other schools are doing, that kind of thing. And I appreciate, Tim's comment and probably agree with it. But, if you've tried to go out and do any kind of bidding and buying right now, and I know Jamie was concerned about this. So, Sarah, I appreciate you, saying something about that. I certainly would support, tabling it. I'm not saying I'm not going to support the $15,000 limit. I think it would be nice to have a little bit more, information. It's just my comment.
Okay, so it sounds like Sarah, you made the motion, and Guy, you said you would second it?
Yes.
Okay, so there will be no more discussion, because once the motion is on the floor to table it, we won't have any more discussion. So I'll just go ahead and ask who is in favor of tabling it. Please signify with a thumbs up. So it looks like Guy and Alice and Gina and Sarah and 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 in favor, and it looks like those not in favor, please give me a thumbs down. I see Tim has a thumbs down, and Renee and Chris and Abby. Okay, so I get to be a tiebreaker, and Alice, I'm sorry we can't have discussion. So I would say that we would table it just so we can bring it back around. It by tabling it, it does nothing, that it stays in place. So we're not going to change anything right now. It remains status quo. So I will vote to table it, and it will go back to policy. And I don't really think there's a lot that probably has to happen at policy. It could just come back here when Jamie's able to join us. Sarah?
Does tabling it send it back to policy, or can we just put it on a different agenda for the board?
Well, I guess
Funds.
that's a good question. The question I have is, will our questions, it sounds like there's some questions about, what other districts are doing, and maybe we can just move it to the next agenda. If that is okay with everybody else. I don't really think it needs a lot of discussion at policy, so that's a good point. Alice? Hold on, Alice, you're on mute. Oh no, you are on mute. You're not on mute now, but we can't hear you. Okay, I can like barely hear you. Do you want to leave and come back in? Or type your comment in the chat? It's okay. Andrea?
So I just, if we have confirmed if we're sending it back to policy or just holding discussion at the next board meeting. So we're tabling it to what? And I mean, actually, if you're sending it back to policy, you should have a motion for that. If you're just tabling it to the next board meeting, then you're good to go. And just an FYI, the VSBA model policy does have a line where you fill in the blank. VSBA does recommend in their model policy that there be a limit set that the board decides they want to look at.
Okay. So Sarah, it sounds like you made the motion to table it, and I am going to assume that because you asked the question, does it have to go back to policy, that you just want it tabled for it to come back on another agenda to the full board.
Correct. I just wanted, like I said, I told Jamie that I would let him know when it was on the agenda so that he could, make his comments on it. So
Okay.
I was expecting it to come back here.
Okay. All right. Okay, then we will just table it to another agenda. Alice, I'm sorry I can't hear you, and I'm sorry I can't see any comments from you. If you want to sign out and come back in, it may change your settings. Sometimes that happens. Okay, so we will table that for the next meeting. Okay. 5.5 is the first reading of the student attendance. And Chris had indicated at the beginning of the meeting that the recommendation was to not present this tonight. So we are going to not actually have any action on this, and we're going to send that back to committee because it's not ready to be presented. Okay. Now, next is 5.6. And that is regarding committee structure. And I have a couple of people who've indicated they'd like to speak about this. We, just to give a little bit of context, we talked about committee structure during our board retreat, and we've had questions about members of the public who are participating on current board committees. And so I wanted to have a more formal discussion about how we should move forward with the committee structure with the full board here, and decide if we should continue to have members of the community participate as committee members, and if so, what we'll have to develop a process to be able to add them to the committees, and also to, would they serve for a certain length of time and that sort of thing. So the first person that indicated an interest in speaking was Terry Reel. So Terry, if you'd like to go ahead, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Many community members have been asking or showing interest in participating in these committees as members, and the canned response from you folks has been you don't have a mechanism to appoint these people. I've engaged some of the previous board members and chairs, and their consensus is there's really nothing preventing you from doing it. And if that's the case, why isn't the board willing to appoint new community members to these committees? It's been done in the past, so it's not like it's never been done. The board and the district keep stating you want community involvement and discussion, yet this opportunity is just continuing to languish. If the board is unwilling to appoint new community members, then the board should act immediately to remove the community members that are currently on these committees and thank them for their service. Failing to appoint new members or remove the existing members does not provide equal or equitable access to members of the community to participate with the board or the district. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Terry. And next is Josh Howard. You also indicated you'd like to speak, so go ahead.
Yeah, it's basically exactly what Terry is saying. And these board members, they get on there, they don't get off. These people are the public. I mean, these committee members, but they're voting on it, and we didn't elect them to vote. So I think either get rid of the public committee members altogether, or do like a 1-year limitation, but still, they shouldn't be allowed to vote. We elect people to vote. We didn't elect them. It seems like it's a great recipe to have favored votes in situations for whoever, kisses up the best.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Okay, so now I'll open it up to the board and ask you to give me your thoughts about how we should move forward, and hopefully can come to some kind of consensus in the next few minutes, and we can, share that with the community, and then we can move on to our next agenda item. Would anybody like to start? Guy?
Sure, why not? I've actually experienced both, and I understand the, conundrum around voting or non-voting. I certainly support, as much public input as we can have. We've in the past we have not had a whole lot, but I've been involved in committees where people who weren't officially part of the committee but knew a lot about whatever it was we were talking about were extremely helpful, and I can point to a number of examples around that. What I want to remind folks is that the committees don't have a final say. The committees have a recommendation, and the board has a final say. And I know that some people are a little anxious about, some community members might, stack a committee. I understand that concern. I think, the committee chairs can handle that. So I certainly would be in favor of involving as many people who want to be involved in committees, understanding that they don't have a final say.
Okay, thanks, Guy. Sarah?
I would kind of echo what Guy's saying. I've been on committees where we had community members, facilities, policy in the past. And I think, just because people cannot necessarily commit to running for school board, it's a big commit, as we all know. There's tons of meetings every month, but they still have valuable input, and I would recommend that we allow community members on our committees. I think there should be some limitations, and I don't know if that would be perhaps like one Barre City, one Barre Town per committee to kind of keep it even. That's kind of the way that the school board is structured. But I would welcome committee members.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to weigh in on this? Gina?
I'm also obviously welcome community input. I think it adds a lot of value to our meetings. I guess I'm confused, and I apologize. Are we talking about it sounded like Guy was saying that yes to community members, but that there would be limits on voting. But I'm assuming that the point of having them be on a committee would be to give them voting. I don't know, rights isn't the right word, but that's the one I'm going to use. Voting privileges on the committee as well. I know that we had a community member on a previous committee who argued that if they weren't able to vote, then what was the point? So I guess I'm a little unclear about if we're talking about, if we're formally inviting people to sit on a committee, does that come with the ability to vote on that committee when things come up?
So I think that's where we're at. We're having that discussion. So I think the first question is, should, I guess if we break it down, the first question is, should we allow community members on committees? And the second question is, if yes, then should we have them be voting members? Should we restrict the amount of people that can participate on a committee? Should we have them be allowed to vote? So those are the, I guess, what's up for discussion.
I guess I'm sorry to jump back in, but I guess my question is, if they're not allowed to vote, I'm sorry, I guess my thoughts aren't organized well enough. I guess anyone can attend a committee. These are all public meetings. Anyone can attend any of these meetings. And so if the goal is not to have people voting on committees, then I guess I'm unsure what formal appointment to a committee indicates or accomplishes for people. I don't know if that meets the public desire to be as involved in the board as they want to be, I guess. But again, I apologize, I'm not more organized in my thoughts.
No, I think you bring up a good point, because if we say, yes, we want community members to be appointed to committees, but we don't want them to vote, then how are they any different than someone who just shows up to participate as a community member, because they're open committee meetings? So I think that's what you're trying to say. And I think it's a valid point. Sarah?
For the record, I wanted to say that I was in favor of community members. Like I said, one from Berry City, one from Berry Town for each committee, as there's the desire, with voting rights.
Okay, thank you. Tim?
Yeah, if people don't believe that this board was not created to push an agenda and sway things a different way, then they really aren't paying attention. What the community is really wanting is an opportunity to actually weigh in, not just be blown off every time they speak. And we really should stop doing that.
So what is your recommendation? To have community members be a part of the committees?
There's got to be some constructive way to do that. The problem is when they bring things up in committee, and the discussion is good, it's lively, and that's fine. The problem is when we get to this full board, it's all stacked against everybody who does it wanting what the full board wants. So that's the frustration of it.
Okay. So I'm not sure that you answered my question, but okay.
If you have a way you want to do it that makes sense, then do it. If you're not going to do it, then tell people right away we're not going to do it, so they can stop asking us to do it.
Well, I think that's why we're having this discussion. So my question for you is, do you think we should have community members participate on committees? And it sounds like you're saying yes.
Absolutely yes.
Okay. And you think they should have voting rights?
That's where I think they should have a lot of leverage in what they're saying. And I think that a lot of the times that they're feeling kind of tossed aside and they don't really care. And so that's the frustration in it.
Okay. Before we move on, Josh, Howard, could I ask you to mute yourself? We're just getting some feedback. Thank you so much. Alice, go ahead. No, we still can't hear you. Alice has left the meeting. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak while Alice has left and is, I'm assuming, coming back in? Chris Parker?
So one of the things that I'm thinking about with this is sometimes, so I'm on finance and policy, sometimes the things that I have to discuss at finance and policy comes from attending board meetings. And so I do have a little bit of a concern of if folks are on committees and they only attend the committee meetings, they might not, I don't know, have heard the full history of certain issues or be fully informed. And I just wonder how, I don't know. I'm feeling a little bit like Gina right now. Like, I'm not sure I have fully formed idea on this, but just how you sort of stay fully involved and informed if you're not on the board and you just attend a once a month committee meeting. And does that do anything to how we run committees or how people get their information? That's just a wondering that I have, or a concern I have possibly about that.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Alice. Alice has. Andrea?
So just, going back historically, it was agreed, at one point that it would be beneficial to have community members, that yes, they should vote, because otherwise, like Gina said, why are they here? But if you structure it so that, and to reiterate, committees cannot take any action. They can only make recommendations. And if a committee can't come to a consensus, then that can be brought to the board, that the committee could not agree on this particular item. So they're turning it over to the board for, even more discussion and making the decision. So, it has been deemed, it can't, someone who is not elected cannot officially vote to take action, but it doesn't do any harm if they're on a committee. I would just, if I structured a committee, I would make sure that you have to have an equal amount of board members or more, or more board members. So if you had 3 board members and 2 or 3 committee members, I would think that another reason why it was discussed adding committee members was to maybe alleviate some of the work from board members who are having to attend too many committee meetings. So this way it could potentially lighten their load and get other viewpoints.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that. Is there anyone else who'd like to chime in? Chris Parker?
Yeah, I think another piece would be how would it be, or another thing we would have to decide, how would it be decided if we were saying, okay, one person from Barrytown, one from Barry City, or one slot for each of those folks on each committee, and say 5 people wanted to be on the committee or more, how will it be decided who gets chosen for that committee in a way that is fair and equitable to all interested parties?
So I think that, if we probably don't have to hash out all of the details tonight, but I think what we would need to do is first decide, do we want to have community members and do we want to give them voting privileges? And if so, then we need to decide how many, what's the process for putting your name in to be appointed. Do we put what is their term limit? Is it just for a year? Is it for 2 years? Whatever the things, and not term limits, but their length of service as a committee member. So I think there are a lot of details that would need to be worked out if we decide that that's the route we're going to go. I think we have a few holdovers right now and they are sort of in limbo. And so, whatever we decide, I think we would probably, my recommendation, if we do say we want community members, I would think that we'd have to just start with a clean slate and say, thank you for your service. If you'd like to apply, you can apply for these positions if that's what we'd like to do. And, there may be more interest in certain committees, over others. I don't know, but I think we'd have to have lots of different procedures in place, guidelines for how that would work. Sarah?
Just to kind of answer Chris's question, and this isn't the way we have to do it, but in the past, at least when I was on the Barry City board, we had I can't remember, but there was actually like a board position that was open and it wasn't election time. So what happened is people submitted like a letter of interest and, you know, the board reviewed them and then just selected somebody. So I figured it would be something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the same thing, just for the simple fact that I know that's how the city council does it. There's committees here in the city, and you know, if you want to be on the, you know, traffic advisory committee, I think that's one of them. You know, if there's an opening, they, you know, will put out there that, you know, these are the openings on the committees, and you have to put your name in, and then you go in and you chat with the council, and then they choose who to appoint to the positions. So that's, I would think that would probably be a fair way to have, you know, select people for committees. Andrea?
There's something to keep under consideration. The committees are formed after the March vote, and it's part of the board reorganization. And so the committees were formed then, and we'd have to double check on whether or not it may, the community members who are on the committees, it might have been part of a vote actually. So we would have to double check if you were thinking about asking them to step down. It might be that you would have to formally vote to remove them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the last time that I do remember the last time we discussed it, but I don't remember if we did vote or if we just decided we would leave it as it was and everything else would just sort of be status quo. So I guess we'll have to do some research on that if we decide to move forward. Alice, I know you had wanted to speak. I'm not sure if going out and coming back in has changed. You're okay? Okay. And is there anyone else who'd like to speak about this, or do you want to would someone like to make a motion on how to move forward with this? I guess not.
I'll
Sarah?
make a motion that we allow community members on the committees.
Okay, and would you like to include in your motion about whether they should have voting privileges?
Including voting privileges.
Okay.
I'll second that motion with the caveat that we obviously need to hammer out the details.
Yes. Okay. So is there any further discussion? Are there any questions? Guy?
So, do we have a committee on committees? I'm just kidding, but you know, who hammers out the details?
I don't know. That's a good question. We could form a committee on committees. That's an excellent idea.
I think that it would need to be the policy committee, or is that inappropriate? But basically, we need to determine how many members of the public are on. I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand and I interrupted. Should I keep talking?
Thanks, Gina, but I think you're on the right track. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this group seems really fun on calling every other school and see what they're doing. Maybe somebody should call around all the other schools and find out what they're doing.
Well, we could certainly do that, but I think the issue that we have right now is there are community members who would like to participate, and it sounds like there are a fair number of people on the board who are in support of letting community members participate. So we could call around, but if not everybody has the same structure that we do, so it may not be helpful to make those calls and find that out. We may we might just have to strike out on our own here, Tim. Are there any other questions or discussion? Sarah?
Can I change my motion or propose that we allow two committee members for each, or two community members for each committee, one Berry Town, one Berry City. In order to be elected, they have to submit a letter of interest, which would be discussed at the board and appointed, and that the position would run until board reorganization every March.
And can I make a suggestion that instead of using the word elected, you say appointed?
Appointed, yes, sorry.
Okay. And Gina, you were the one to second the motion. Are you okay with that amendment?
I'll second that as long as I don't have to repeat it verbatim.
Okay. Renee. You're on mute.
I always do the hand and not the microphone. I just wanted
Yeah.
to follow up on Tim's question. So Tim, as far as I know, a lot of other districts don't have nearly the amount of committees that we have. And so I don't think this is as much of an issue.
That is true. That is true. We are an anomaly in that way.
Andrea.
I'm just going to throw something out there. I think in fairness to all, like when you have open board seats, that it should be advertised. So you should advertise committee openings so that anyone aware that these positions are available, and if they're interested, they can apply.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think we would use all of the same channels that we have used in the past. So Ben Matthews, I appreciate your hand. This is unfortunately a board discussion. So I can't call on you. If you have something that you'd like to share, that I'm hoping that we can, if there's something that we can help you with, address. Oh, okay. That's probably even better then. Thank you. Okay, so seeing no other hands raised, I'm going to go ahead and see who is in favor of allowing 2 community members, one from Berry City, one from Berry Town, that would be appointed. We will hammer out all of the details regarding that position, those positions. But one from Berry Town, one from Berry City, and they would serve until board reorganization. Is that about the gist of your motion, I think, Sarah? Okay. All right. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Guy, Abby, Alice, Chris, Sarah, Tim, Renee, that's no, and Gina is a thumbs up. Okay, and those not in favor? Renee. Alice, you're in favor of the motion, right? Alice? Okay, I think we have 7 in favor of the motion and 1 opposed. Chris Parker?
Yeah, so we said, until board reorganization. So if we were going to do that now before March, what happens to the folks who are on the committees already?
We have to find out what, I'm going to ask Andrea to help with that. We have to find out what, if we voted to appoint them, whether it was, we voted on it, whether we should ask them to, if we have to vote to remove them, if we need to ask, if we can ask them to just reapply. I'm not sure how they originally stayed on the committees, because they were all holdovers from previous, when we were smaller districts, each separate districts. And so we did have this discussion as a merged board, but I don't remember if we voted on that.
So we are talking about having the possibility of some folks joining sometime between now and March, and then new folks after that?
No, I think the way that I understand the motion is we are going to hammer out details, and we could probably start asking people to, well, we could probably ask people to start submitting their requests to be appointed maybe by the end of October, and then they could be appointed to serve out the rest of this year or the rest of this term, if you will, until March, until board reorganization. And then we would do the process all over again and have someone be appointed, and then they would serve a full year from March to March. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just sounds like a lot of work. If I'm being honest.
It sure does. Andrea.
Yeah, the ones that are currently on, one thing I could pretty much swear to this, is that they once the board agreed that they were going to continue to keep community members on, they were specifically asked to join these committees for this current year. So you might want to think deeply before you tell them they have to start applying, because I think you already invited them and they accepted.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure about that, but okay. We'll we need to figure that out. We also need to figure out we obviously can't just, start putting out things for community members to start submitting letters of interest to be on the committee, starting tomorrow. We have to hammer out some details. So hopefully the community members who are interested will hang in there just a little bit longer, and we'll figure out these details, and then hopefully have community members participating very soon as committee members. Guy?
Yeah, I don't think we're talking a whole lot of people right now. I could be wrong. The other thing is, we as a board can also establish special committees. So that's yet another opportunity, for potentially outside people to get involved in. And I guess if we were to do that, I would seriously consider, depending on the issue, that 2 people might not be enough. That there are certainly special projects that we've done in this community before where a group of 10 or 15 people was really helpful in making a final decision. So I wouldn't want to totally tie our hands, but I think that would be up to the discretion of the board chair. And I think the policy or our bylaws say that can be up to your discretion. So just a thought.
Okay. Thanks, Guy. Renee?
So this sounds like a lot of work to me as far as hammering out all the details, and I'm just wondering how that's going to get done in the next month.
I'm not sure. I suppose I will have to just, I guess I'll be the one to pull together some guidelines and share them with, we could bring them to the next meeting to see if we're all in agreement with the process, if we're okay with the process, and hopefully iron out what current committee members who are community members, what we need to do about them. And then maybe by the end of October, we can start opening it up for other people to be appointed. I don't think it's as difficult. It's just, basically putting down on paper what our intention is.
Right. Yeah. I just want to make sure that if this is something that, what I'm hearing is that the goal is to have this done by the end of October. I don't want people who are listening or who are reading notes afterwards or whatever to be expecting that, and then it doesn't happen if that's what we're shooting for.
Yeah. No, I think that that we can have a goal, but we don't, we'll do our best. And if we don't all agree and we need to keep, making changes, but here's this is part of the process, is we have to decide as a board how we're going to do this. And so we can't, I could type them up and think they look great, but if I bring them back to the board and the board says no, then we have to go, we have to wait another cycle and go to the next board meeting to have another discussion. And that's, just part of open meeting law. So our hope is that we can have it taken care of by the end of October. But yes, Renee, I think you're exactly right. It, depending on how the board agrees with, the general guidelines as they're presented, they may not, and we may have to make some changes and questions may come up. So that could be our goal, but it, we might have to amend it as needed. Okay, so I will work on that and we will add it to a future agenda to discuss. Okay, so next is 5.7, and it's the COVID update. And we have 2 members of the community that have joined in person with Chris Hennessy, and they would like to speak regarding that. Normally, I let someone give sort of the brief presentation about, but I'm not sure you're going to be able to give a brief presentation, Chris, and then have them speak. So I'm not sure what you feel more comfortable doing.
In this case, I would welcome folks speaking first. I think it would be helpful. I have Barrytown parents Marcy Kreitz and Marissa Green here, and I'm going to just have them share this laptop, so they'll just switch seats with me now. I don't know if there's anybody else beyond the 2 of them. I don't recall, but Marcy, do you want to start first? So this is Marcy Kreitz, and here she is.
Thank you. Hi, Marcy.
Hi.
So during this portion of public comment, you get 2 minutes, and I'm not going to cut you off right at 2 minutes, but try to keep it brief so that we can get the update and move on with the rest of the agenda. Okay.
Sure. I just have a brief statement I'd like to read.
Sure.
And I'll just go ahead and start. I'm a parent of 2 children at the Barrytown Elementary School, 1st and 3rd grade. And I'm urging the board tonight and the administration to reconsider policies surrounding contact tracing. I believe we are sending too many healthy children home. Their education and mental health is suffering, not to mention financial stress on the families who are unable to work during absences, which leads to a whole slew of other potential psychosocial issues. If children test positive or have blatant symptoms of COVID, they should stay home. But sending hundreds of kids home for 10 to 14 days who are perfectly healthy is not only unsustainable, but harmful to our children, families, and community. My family has absolutely loved Barrytown Elementary School, but due to these overreaching policies, we are now strongly considering homeschooling. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Marcy. And Marissa, is that the...
Marissa's going to join us right now.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Marissa.
Hi there. Good evening. I am, I'm not scripted. I'm going to speak directly from my heart. I'm awful with scripts. I would have messed it all up. I'm a parent of an 8th grader at Barrytown. Last year, we did choose to homeschool. We did homeschool for the year. I work from home. I'm lucky, and I know I'm privileged in that sense that this doesn't disrupt my income, but I'm in human resources, and I can tell you it does disrupt most of our lower income families when we're doing this. It is not the people who are making $50,000, $60,000 a year who can get PTO, who can stay home. You're talking about your $15 an hour mother who may be a single parent, or father who may be a single parent. I can tell you that we chose to homeschool last year to avoid just what is going on now. The in and the out, the disruption to education. I got a thing. Sorry.
Somebody's trying to get in. Excuse me.
Sure.
There we go.
My son asked to come back this year. His 8th grade, his last year at Barrytown Elementary. He's been there since 1st grade and loves the school, loves his friends. When yesterday an email went out about him potentially not being able to eat in the cafeteria, and when they were told this, he came home and he cried. He was devastated. This is the one time a day he gets to see his friends. None of his friends, none of his small group, he's a extremely shy, extremely high anxiety child. He has panic attacks in public now due to the mess of COVID. And this is the only time he interacts with his real friends. And this was going to be taken away. This is an extremely important year. We're not offering any sort of support for these kids when they're home. Substance use is on the rise. Suicide ideations are on the rise. And we're continuing to only worry about the one thing, and we're ignoring mental health of an entire generation. We're sending healthy kids home. He missed 50% of his first 2 weeks of school. Not a symptom, not a worry. He's back now. He's happy to be back. It's his choice to be there. But are we going to continue to, what happens when school dances come around? This is a poignant year in his life, and we potentially could be causing social damage, growth damage to him moving forward. These are important times where they learn how to treat each other, where they learn how to interact with each other. How are they going to do that when they can't interact with each other, when they can't smile, they can't see each other? It's going to create long-term problems. And we have to stop focusing on the one thing and focusing on the whole child. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And then I see Josh Howard also indicated this is 5.7, right? He would like to speak, yes, to this as well. So Josh, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, those are great points. It's kind of what I've been saying for a while. It's we need to make a better plan than what we're doing right now. Currently I just got a notification today, my 5th grader, she's a close contact. Now she's going to miss 2 weeks of school. We're not that far into it. My 7th grader already was a close contact last week. Luckily, she was vaccinated. I don't have the same option for my 5th grader or my 1st grader. We got to do something better than what we're doing. We can't just say, yeah, kids can stay home half the time and it'll be all fine and dandy. I have the same problem. My 7th grader, she has anxiety. We have to tell her she's a close contact. She was freaking out all weekend. Got her tested anyways. Came back negative, thank God. But it had me question, what is the point of close contact? I mean, these kids are missing too much school. We got to come up with a better plan. I mean, maybe if kids are close contacts in COVID, maybe have a program put together. They get all these kids together in a spaced out area and have some volunteers actually so they can still socialize, and then parents can still go to work. We got to do better. And a backup plan doesn't mean, remote learning. It can mean anything. It doesn't have to be used just for COVID. It can be used for a water main break. For whatever reason the school closes, we can do better. I understand the state guidelines, but that's just a base level. And obviously there's extenuating circumstances where I'm sure you can call the state, say we got half the school missing. This is what we're planning on doing. Because no matter what we do, according to state guidelines, it's not going to count as school day anyways. I'm sure they'd listen to you. They'd give you a break because some things you can't control.
Okay, thanks, Josh. I think that's it for public comment. So Chris, would you like to go ahead with your update?
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Josh, Marissa, Marcy, thank you for joining us. I think, first of all, I want to let folks know our COVID coordinator, Jen Lyon, who is one of the Spalding high school nurses. She's also the coordinator of our COVID team. She's joined us here tonight. I just want to introduce Jen, first of all, and make sure people know we have a person in that position. She is, along with the whole administration and staff, performing heroically under these incredibly challenging situations, all of which these 3 parents just really, they hit it on the head of what we're facing here and the challenges that we're dealing with. I would like to kind of just give a quick update about kind of the lay of the land right now. And I have 5 quick topics that I want to just give people brief updates on. And after each one, I'd like the board to have an opportunity to ask me any questions. If I can't answer them, Jen is here to help me out. They are, first of all, just the current state of COVID in the BUUSD community, where we're at with numbers and mitigation strategies and all that. The second piece is surveillance testing and where we are as a district with plans to get surveillance testing going for our community. I'm going to follow that up with at-home learning expectations, a very, very challenging topic all around the state right now for when especially our youngest kids have to be home, like what was just described. The fourth topic is mandatory vaccinations for staff, where we are with that topic. That's one that is coming up in the very near future, and I've got some updates there. And then the final one is possible options that the state is discussing with superintendents and districts to replace contact tracing, which is the source of much of the frustration that the 3 parents who just spoke were accurately and correctly pointing out. So before I just get into the current state of where we are as a district, I want to say from my heart on behalf of everybody who works in the district, how we fully empathize with what the current situation has had on family life, working life. It's extraordinary what families all around the country are dealing with here for our youngest kids. I cannot imagine how my family would have dealt with this when my girls were little. And it's heartbreaking stuff, guys. And the decisions that the COVID team in conjunction with principals and the nurses are having to make on a daily basis are absolutely gut-wrenching for the reasons these folks are talking about here tonight. We know the impact that it's having on kids and on families and work life. I cannot tell you how seriously we're taking this. So with that, the current state of COVID in the community right now is as of today, we have had 24 cases in the Barrie district since the start of the school year that have required line lists and contact tracing. Good chunk of those have been in Barrie town, but not all of them. At this point, there is no evidence, nor is there any confirmation from the Department of Health that there's been any transmission in schools. We don't know the source of where these cases are coming from, but they are coming into the schools. So I just want to dispel any rumors that, one, we have confirmation that they're being that the cases are being transmitted in schools, or that we actually have any sort of inside information on where they're coming in, because we do not, and nor have we heard anything from the Department of Health. So I think that number is important to share. It may seem like, given the amount of emails that have been going home to the Barrie community and recently to the Barrie City community as well, that we have many, many more than that. But that indicates the complexity of this contact tracing process and how thorough and thoughtful we have to be when we make that very, very serious decision to reach out to a family. I would also point out on this topic that there is a statewide portal through the Department of Health with numbers around the state in schools, but it's very hard to keep up to date, or I should say, it's not up to date. So they update it every week to 10 days, but right now it's indicating we're at about half the level at Barrie than we actually are on that site right now. I think that's the case for other schools as well. So with that, just for the current state, before I get into the surveillance testing update, does the board have any questions for me or Jen? Sarah?
Just a quick question. You might address this later. I just wanted to double check our contact tracing procedure or policy that we have going now. Is that something that we came up with as a district, or is that coming from the AOE or CDC?
No, it's very clearly from the Vermont Department of Health and Agency of Education. We are all following the same. We are all following the same process. But I should point out, Sarah, you bring up a good point. Districts are doing so with very different resources, and it also depends really on what the case count is in each community. There are some very few, but a few districts in Vermont who are dealing with it to a much higher level than we are, and there are actually some who haven't had to deal with it at all, and it's been all systems go and a fairly normal start to the year. So, but we are all following the same game plan. Abby.
Who is doing the contract? Who is actually performing the contact tracing right now?
That is a great question, because it really depends on the staffing of the day. Ideally, what happens is it's done with our nursing staff, with principals, with any teachers that have the information, and they compile that information. There have been times, however, when due to staffing shortages, either nurses are out, where the principals have to take that over entirely. It's a team effort, all hands on deck scenario on a near daily basis. Once those line lists are put together, the COVID team comes together that is led by Jen, who is here tonight, and then we start the whole communication process. It is quite an undertaking, and when these cases occur, it can take multiple people. It's basically an all-consuming enterprise to do it right, because we want to make sure that we're sending the right information home and doing it correctly. So that this does take a whole lot of personnel power. I will say that since the mitigation strategies that we've been putting in place since the second week of school, that we've really been able to tighten up, it has had a big impact on shrinking these lists. And that has made it a little bit more doable. But that, again, is all around the staffing as well.
Are these the same staff that were performing the contact tracing last year?
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Renee? Renee, you're muted, just so you know.
I know I'll get it eventually. You'd think I'd have it by now. So I know that the original plan pretty much in all the schools was that, we're going to be able to go pretty much back to normal. And so as these cases keep coming out, has there been any consideration, or is this already happening, of cohorting kids so that it's not as many kids that are ending up being out?
I'll be able to speak to that a little bit better when I get to the potential replacement for contact tracing that's being discussed at the state level that I was brought up to speed on a little bit today. But let's just say that this is a huge concern everywhere right now, and that putting kids out for the amount of time we've been putting out. And I want to point out as well that these times where kids are required to be out is being extended because of the lags in testing results at the sites around the state. They have not, so we're not able to get timely negative results or positive results for that matter, and that's just extending these times out by days, and it just adds to the incredible frustration that we're all having, because we are not supposed to have kiddos come back without that negative result until that 14-day point. And it just, a lot of our kids should have been able to come back much sooner, and that's the real source of frustration. I think I answered your question, Renee. I hope I did. Any other questions about that, folks? Obviously, if you think of any, please pipe in when we get through the next topic. The next one is surveillance testing, and we are working with the state to make sure surveillance testing is available for staff and students. And again, this is a capacity and manpower, personnel power issue. The good news is we have brought back former Barry City elementary middle school nurse Eliza Benoit. She is going to be working with us on a part-time basis to get our surveillance testing operation up and running. We are getting all the materials ready to roll next week. We should be able to start this for staff and students, hopefully, by the first week of October. This is fully voluntary, so families know, and we'll have a process in place where families can sign their child up to be tested. It's very quick and fairly straightforward, as I understand it. But it was an issue with a delay that a lot of districts were facing, including ours, was making sure we had the capacity to do it for the numbers that we have. And I'm happy to report that Eliza, for anybody who knows Eliza, she's a very, let's just say she's a perfect person to do this. Great with young children, and we'll be able to do it in a disarming and very thorough way when we get it started. So we anticipate we'll have everything we need to go by first week of October. Any questions about surveillance testing? Chris Parker?
Yeah, I want to encourage everyone who is concerned about these issues related to testing delays and kids having to stay home longer to do the surveillance testing. Montpelier started the surveillance testing this week, and just in my school alone, in the elementary school in Montpelier, we had almost 300 tests done on Monday, and we had all the results back on early Wednesday morning. And so they are coming back very fast, and it was really helpful to have that information. And I think that really helps with any issues related to close contacts, contact tracing, to have that extra piece of data. So I just am really encouraging staff and family members to sign their kids up if that delay with testing through other states or through other sites is a concern, because they come back very quickly.
To Chris's point, the direction that I'm seeing right now is to move away from the contact tracing to the testing. That's how we're going to get out of this, and I'll be able to speak to that a little bit more in my last topic. Sarah, you had a hand up.
Yeah, and it was kind of answered. So these tests, are they rapid tests? They're not going to the same processing sites that are we concerned that there's going to end up being a backlog of surveillance testing?
Well, I think Chris was just able to say, he said you had 300. It's pretty quick.
Yeah, they're not the
Jen,
rapid tests. They're sent away.
Yeah, because they have to be the rapid test when we have to have that PCR test. And perhaps Jen, if you're here, Jen Lyon, maybe you can speak a little bit to how the surveillance testing, what it entails. Is that possible?
Yeah. So sorry, I can't turn my camera on.
This is Jen Lyon, our COVID coordinator. Jen, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. So the reason that the surveillance tests are coming back pretty quickly is we're contracted with a lab out of Connecticut that just does the surveillance testing for us. So it's not like when you go to the state testing site for our area, like behind Burger King, where it goes all to one state lab. This is going to a dedicated location. So we may see a little more of a lag time and not see it within 24 hours, but we shouldn't be seeing a greater delay than 24 or 36 hours because their sole purpose is just to do surveillance testing for our schools. And we're going to be working with Green Mountain Courier Service to make sure that our tests get there in a timely manner so they can be run and we can get results quickly.
We're truly hoping this is a game-changing situation. We really are.
Correct. And this is not a rapid test. This is a PCR test. The rapid tests look for a protein on the virus, where the PCR test is looking for part of the DNA of the virus. And that's why it's considered to be a more accurate test.
Any other questions on surveillance testing, folks?
Chris, this is.
Oh,
Guy.
sorry, Guy, I missed you.
It's all right. It's all right. Have small hands. So I'm assuming that the person that we've hired is, for the district. Is that correct?
That is right.
Okay. So where is that person going to be stationed? So if people want to get testing, where do they go?
We're going to have all the procedures and the whole operation ready to roll next week. We're getting the materials in. I would anticipate that Eliza is going to be going to all the schools, but we still have to hash those details out. Because we need to do this so it's easy for people. We don't want to be, we obviously don't want to have a 6-year-old from Barry City go up to a school they're not familiar with. We want to make this as natural and easy for families as possible, not to mention convenient as well. So it's really important that it works out that way. The focus will be for our K-6 kiddos as well, our ineligible unvaccinated kids. Any other questions on that one? Okay, thank you. The next topic is at-home learning expectations. Those community members present and perhaps board members know that I think it was on Monday, we sent an update out where we are really looking with all the number of kids that we have out to try to make sure we have learning opportunities for kids when they're out. For a little bit of context, and I've shared this through emails and various other sources, conversations, and I think Josh mentioned this earlier in his statement. The state is not recognizing remote learning days right now as days of attendance. In fact, they are very, very clearly holding the line that schools are not to be putting together full-scale remote learning school days for kids, and really getting back to our guiding principles that I've been talking about since the summer of keeping kids safe and keeping our schools open. The idea here is obviously to make sure we have as many kids in school as possible. The other piece I want to add to this is as we've been trying to put together these options, there's there's a real capacity issue at play here. When we were in remote learning at various times last year, whether it was hybrid, full-time, whatever it was, we had all staff all teachers working in that remote model, with the exception of the high school. The high school was doing it, kind of doing both. If there are any high school teachers here right now, they will be the first to say it was an incredibly daunting and challenging and unsustainable task to do both. What we're facing now is even more challenging because we are dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. And despite our best efforts, it's really clear that we're not going to be able to provide long-term synchronous learning expectation or learning opportunities for kids when they're out. Schools are putting together packets of work for kids to keep them as up to date as possible. We fully understand this is in no way replicates the school day or is an authentic or engaging way for kids to learn. However, just to give a little context about the sort of operational challenges we're facing when these big cases happen where a lot of kids have to be out. What we're finding is that even if most of a class is out, we're still having other kids come in and that child is going to be taught in person. We are also finding that in many cases, there's sort of it's almost like a circular dilemma where we'll have the teacher has to be out to be home with their own child who's out. When the teacher can be there, we're finding that we're on an almost daily basis having to put those people in substitute situations to cover other places where we don't have teachers in place. That's the situation we're facing with our sub shortage and staff shortages as well. So we've been working, the principals and leadership teams have been working on this hard since last week. We've come to the conclusion that we're just simply not going to be able to put those sort of synchronous remote, similar to what we were doing last year, in place during this situation. So the goal now is going to be to make sure we get focus on the testing over the contact tracing so we have as few kids out as possible. I know this is hard for a lot of families to hear. I just want people to understand. I want to be transparent and as open about it as we can. We just have to do this in a way that is manageable and doable for all. So any questions about that? And I will be updating the community about this before the weekend as well, just so we know. Sonia?
So my question is, how do you, because you talked about the contact trace or the surveillance testing, but how does the surveillance testing reduce the contact tracing? If it's only happening once a week?
Well, I think Chris spoke to this a little bit. What we can do is once we get the negative results, after the time of exposure is elapsed, we can have kids back in right away. And I could jump out a little bit ahead to my last topic, if that would be helpful, but it's up to you. I can jump into it now, but
it's fine. I can wait. I'm trying to understand how it's a piece of data, but I'm trying to understand how it's helpful if it happens on Monday and then something happens on Wednesday. So if you're going to address that later, then
I am.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's a model that's being piloted in a number of states around the country called Test to Stay, and some of you may have heard of it. I'll get into a little bit of the details about it when we get there. But it basically keeps kids in these situations. They have the ability to stay in school while waiting for.
And you can also find out about any positives that are asymptomatic before it gets spread to many kids and many symptoms start coming up, because some kids will be asymptomatic and you can get them out of school quicker than you would have if you waited till the symptoms are showing up.
And I think just there's a natural segue here. I might as well just talk about this a little bit. I had been hearing that, and if people have questions about the at-home learning, of course, we can come back to that. But there's a huge push right now to move away from the contact tracing. It is as we've been saying over and over again, completely unsustainable, and it's not effective in many people's view. And I think from the standpoint of people who have to, like myself, who have to be sending these emails to families, having conversations with families, this is the first time in my career. I've always tried to be real with people and transparent, and I don't feel like I can talk and write to families with any degree of conviction that we're doing the right thing. And that is just a brutal position to be in. And I know many of my colleagues around the state are in the same position. It really speaks to what Marcy and Marissa were talking about here, and Josh was, and the experiences families are having. We're doing our best with what we've been handed, but it doesn't feel good at all. So we have to go in this direction. But this test to stay model, they're basically rapid antigen tests. And I was under the impression, I shared some information with Sonia this morning, I'd reached out to the Agency of Education to say, we would like to pilot this. Our numbers are such, and the size of our community is such, and the impact it's had on our community, we would be a perfect community to pilot. But he made it clear to me there's no pilot going on. This is something that they want to put out to the entire state. So fine, that's great. The concern that we have is that there need to be the resources to make sure we can do it. It's interesting, and Chris, I'd love to talk to you about how your team at Union is doing that for up to 300 kids. That's awesome and super encouraging. If we can do it that quickly, that's great. But anyway, this is being really seriously considered, and not like 3 or 4 months from now, like very, very soon. So I let the powers that be know that we are all in, and we want to be part of this. So any questions about that? And I will do my best. It's all very, very new information, like that I'm just learning on the fly today, but I'll do my best to answer.
So Chris, Alice has her hand raised.
Oh, thank you, Alice.
Is this working better?
Sound great.
Oh, good. Going back to the old ways, speaking of old ways and new ways, I'll work on the new computer. But anyway, do the students have access, or do they have now at-home learning opportunities? Do they have packets? Do they have assignments? Do they have something in their hand, or their parents have something in their hands that the kiddos can work on if they are at home?
Alice, the answer to that is yes. But to be candid, anybody knows that this is not a substitute for a full school day. For one, there's no obvious direct instruction, but there is access to those materials. And it's especially tricky for kiddos, and our coaches have been sharing resources as well. Our teachers have, for parents to use. But we know that this is absolutely no substitute for the school day.
No, that wasn't my question. My question was, do they have something in their hands to work on when they're not in school?
Yes, they do. Okay. Is it adequate, desirable, ideal? No.
But we're just not saying go home, and as was reported to us, that we have students sitting in their pajamas all day. That's the question. Do they have something to work on?
My son didn't get his packet until the 3rd week of school.
Right. So I'm just hearing from one of the moms here with me now that that it is erratic. We are really trying to improve it as we go, and I can assure you, tons of time and effort is being put into making this as authentic and positive as possible. But we know that it can't replicate and isn't ideal.
Chris, can I ask another question?
Sure.
My assumption is that probably more so with older students, but they have access to the Google Classroom, and so there could be more information that's added to their packet or to-do list, or activities that could be required or assigned on a daily basis for particular classes. And I'm assuming that's probably a little more difficult for younger students, but for older students who can manage that interface, they could probably have more assignments just because the teachers can assign them virtually.
You speak to one of the great challenges here, right? The major impact, the vast majority of the children and families being impacted are the youngest kids, right? And those are the ones who really, in most ways, struggle working independently, accessing the technology. I mean, when this started to hit, especially at Barrytown, many of our little ones hadn't even logged onto their devices yet. They hadn't even learned how to use them. So they didn't develop that facility with the technology need, the interface they need. So it just happened so quickly. So Yeah, the major problem here is this is impacting the families of the youngest kids and the kids themselves. And that's the heartbreaking piece with this. No doubt about it. But yes, so for and the cases that have happened in the upper middle school level and at the high school and career center have not had near the impact because the vast majority of the kids are vaccinated and are able to get back in the next day. So it just hasn't had that impact. And that's the main conundrum. So I'll just jump for the sake of time to the final topic here, or what was the second to last, but just an update on mandatory vaccinations for staff. We have found out today that, well, I've known this for about a week now, that Vermont school districts are covered by the OSHA emergency standard that was brought up when President Biden brought up the whole mandatory vaccination for large organizations. That would be for any organization of over 100 employees. We certainly fall into that category. It was stated today at the superintendent's meeting that they will be looking for, when the time comes, for a waiver where all school districts, regardless of their size, will qualify for this. So a state mandate for mandatory vaccination for staff is coming. There's no doubt about it. What I would like to recommend to the board, however, is that we not wait for that mandate. I have had connections and meetings with our association. There's still some stuff to be worked out, but I believe we are in a place where we would have support for mandatory vaccinations. There's still some things to hash out. I would like to get ahead of it. My fear is that if we wait for the state mandate, let's say comes in November, by the time we get it going, it could be the new year. And I think we can get ahead of this and work with our association to get that going. So I just wanted to give everybody an idea that, one, the vaccine mandates for staff are coming. There's no doubt about it. They're just working out the legal stuff, hashing it out, and then there'll be a mandate. I just would like to recommend that our community does not wait for that, and that you give blessing to me to work this out with the association so that we can get on it right away. Alice?
Will the staff be part of the surveillance testing so that if there is anyone on staff who has any reason not to receive a vaccination, that would be part of that surveillance testing?
Well, the first part of your question is, will staff be have access to the surveillance testing? Absolutely. In fact, most districts were starting off just with staff, just to make sure operationally they could be ready to roll. So yes. The other piece is, and this is where we need to make sure that this is all done correctly. There are going to be situations where there are medical exemptions. Thank you. Where there will be medical exemptions, and we got to make sure we have that language right, and that'll be the case down the line for children as well, right? So we don't want to rush into this, but I don't want to waste precious time either. Make sure we do it right. Any other questions, folks?
Renee.
Oh, excuse me, Renee. Yep.
Yeah, Chris, I just want to follow up on that because I obviously am not at the state conversations and I don't know what's going on. But I know that CVH, their policy what they've decided on is you either have to get a vaccination or you test weekly. Has there been any conversations about that? And the reason I'm asking is completely personal in that I have had atrocious effects from the COVID shot and I'm still having issues 6 months later. And so it just makes me a little nervous that, I mean, like somebody in my position, which I'm sure we have teachers in this position, where you might have to give up a 20-year career or put something in your body that's going to make you really sick. And so I'm curious if those conversations, if our medical community thinks that that's the best way, has there been any conversations about that for our teachers?
I mean, I think the answer is yes, and well, I know the answer is yes, and I think that that's why they feel comfortable enough to mandate it at the state level, because I don't think they would otherwise. They're going to need to be exemptions. There's going to need to be situations where, and it raises questions, right? If an unvaccinated person needs to get tested weekly, weekly, when does that occur, right? When do we have the time for that to happen? Is it during the school day? Do we expect it happens after? All of these things have to be hashed out. And I didn't mean to imply this is going to be easy rubber stamp stuff. It's not. But all the more reason to not wait until Thanksgiving, Christmas time. I think if we can get started with the discussion, I've had very positive and productive discussions about this with our association. And Renee, they've shared that there are members who have similar concerns that you do. I've had conversations with some of my colleagues who have similar concerns and experiences that you do. We have to take that seriously.
Well, so as far as the testing goes, though, if you're doing weekly contact testing, couldn't that cover those teachers?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer to that.
Chris, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what percentage of our staff right now is vaccinated?
I do not. Right now, we are slowly but surely getting access to that information, and that'll be the next step where where those who are vaccinated we share. You want the estimate is that school staff around the state are above 90% for vaccination, but that varies wildly depending on the community you're in. Chris's superintendent, Libby, has shared that it's well over 95. I mean, like there are very few people in the Montpelier district who are not vaccinated. There are some districts that I was hearing from today who fear that the number is less than 50% for staff in some of their communities, up in the Northeast Kingdom and other areas. So it's going to vary. It's going to vary by region, by community. But back to your question, do we know? Not specifically yet.
Okay. Guy has his hand raised.
Yeah, just to follow up to that, Chris, because I'd asked a question, I think early on about, the number of staff that were vaccinated. And I think your answer was, well, we feel very confident that, 80% of the Vermonters are vaccinated and stuff. And, I appreciated that answer. But what I will say as a school board member is that, we need to do our part to try to ward off as much as possible this particular issue. And, I will be upfront. I support that. And I support the, those people that, might not want to get vaccinated. And I think we can make, amends with that. But, certainly I think we're in a position to help the situation. And I think we need to do it as soon as possible.
Thank you. Gina?
I just wanted to share that I mandated vaccination for my employees, and I had about 20% of my employee population who were holdouts who did get vaccines. And so I think that, there is at least in my experience, a significant segment of people who are willing to do it with the right incentive. And so it's just my personal way of saying I support that decision. And I also very much understand all of the baggage that goes along with it.
Sarah?
I'm just going to echo the same things that Guy and Gina said. I think it's a great idea. I don't think that we should necessarily wait for the guidance that we're almost positive is coming anyways, because if we can get ahead of the curve, maybe we'll beat out some of the other vaccine clinics. I understand the hesitancy. I was working at the hospital and I even had to have, I think they tested me for a chickenpox vaccine before I got to start there. So I understand there's going to be some hesitancy, but these are what we have to do when we're working in big populations of people. So
the reality is we're going to be told to do this. It's coming. So
are we looking for a motion to allow the superintendent to, I can't word this, or is that what we're doing?
It's not a warned action item. I'm just, I don't know how that would work.
Well, I also am not sure that, I guess that was the question that I have, because we gave Chris the authority, but I can't remember what that entailed. I think it was regarding COVID. And so I have to go back to look at that motion.
I'm bringing this up, Sonia, basically as a source of information that this is the direction I want to go, and I'm looking for your blessing on it. When I say I want to go, we want to go, our team. And but yes, for COVID related matters, the safety and well-being, everything that is informing all of our decisions of our staff and kids and families.
Gina?
Even if it is not required for us to vote on this, if we are able to, I think that we should, because I think it's important for the board to show solidarity behind Chris and his decision around this, and to show that, you know, we're aligned and that has been discussed. So it doesn't sound like it's appropriate for right now, but if it is appropriate for a future meeting, I think that we should do that.
Okay, thanks, Gina. Alice?
Not that that this has to be answered right now, but what will be the contingency for those individuals who choose not to be vaccinated? I think I'm looking for an answer for that, not right now, but at some point we do need.
Okay, thanks, Alice. I think Chris is going to definitely be working on that. Chris Parker?
Yeah, I was just going to say maybe in the meantime, while we're waiting until it would be an action item on a future board agenda, Chris, maybe you could be, and obviously you're connecting with superintendents around the state to look into how are they handling those types of things around wording of what are the options, you know, mandated vaccines, or if you can't or won't for medical, religious exemption reasons, then what's the wording around the testing and the other options, so that when it's on a future agenda and we're ready to go, you've already gathered that information and you're ready to go too. So we're all.
There's lots of language being tossed around out there. We won't have to reinvent the wheel on this at all.
Okay, so it looks like there are no other questions or hands raised. So thank you, Chris, for all of that information.
It's a lot. I know. I appreciate you hearing us out.
Yeah. So let's move on to old business. And the next item on the agenda is 6.1 finalized board engagement document. And Terry Real wanted to speak. Terry?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate the efforts to produce this document and heard loud and clear on many occasions from the board and the district how community involvement, participation, and dialogue are important. But this board recently began reutilizing the district's participation policy, in effect stifling some of the input and participation that was occurring at the board meetings. Now we have this document. I struggled to reconcile what this document states and what is actually done. At a committee meeting a couple of weeks back, a snarky comment was placed in a chat box as a community member was commenting and asking questions. I also sent an email seven business days ago asking follow-up questions for a sprinkler funding discussion and have yet to get an answer. So your new document says 2 business days, right? So I'm 7 days out. I feel like this board and district is not as interested as you'd like us to think in community about participation. I think rather than producing more documents and policies on communication and participation, that we need to begin aligning the walk with the talk. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Terry. So now I'd ask the board, the reason this is on the agenda again is so we can finalize this and it can be published so that the community can understand how to engage with the board regarding complaints and feedback and requests for information, the way that they can dialogue with the board. If last time this was on the agenda at our last meeting, there was not a lot of feedback or revisions or concerns with it. So are there any concerns or comments or questions about it? And if not, would someone like to make a motion to approve this board engagement document so that it can be posted?
I'll make that motion, Sonia.
Thanks, Guy. And anyone? Thanks, Gina. Is there any discussion, conversation? Sarah?
Sorry, this is going to sound nitpicky. I think it was Chris who brought it up at the last meeting. On page 1, towards the bottom, item number 4, dialogue is spelled one way, and then when we actually get to that section, it's spelled the American way with a UE, and I'm just, if we could get that consistent.
Yes, sorry. I sent an email and asked for the change to the date and forgot about the dialogue. So I will ask Josh to make sure that those two match. And I apologize about that. But we can certainly, it doesn't change the intent of the document. So I think we can still move forward as long as everyone else is okay with that. Sorry, I just closed my, Alice, you're next.
Just as a point of interest, could something like this actually scare people away from coming to the board with concerns or issues, or even just participating as an observer? I would just be afraid that if we get too technical with everything that's going to happen, and this is very deep and technical, we have our norms, which are very simply put, and they work very well. Could something like this really just give the impression that we don't want people participating, and unless you adhere to our very strict rules? And that's just a thought as I read these pages. What is going to be the interpretation out in the world of this?
Okay. I have thoughts about that, but I will let Guy go ahead.
Well, Alice, I appreciate that concern, because there are always, potential unintended consequences to anything we do. But from my perspective, what we're trying to do here is, give some people some guidelines on how they can be really productively involved in this particular institution and this particular body that is very important to the community. So, is it perfect? No, I don't know. But it's a real start in terms of trying to engage people. I'm glad that that we're talking about it, and anything we do can always be amended. And I would hope that if people feel, actually, I think if people feel intimidated by it, they will say so.
Thanks, Guy. Sarah?
Thank you. So just to kind of speak to what Alice was saying, we do have the board norms, and I think those kind of give us some guidelines on when we're in a board meeting. But I think this document helps the community understand how to communicate with us outside of these meetings. I don't know about the rest of you. I get emails from people almost daily. And sometimes I feel bad that I can't get back to people right away. I do have a full-time job, but I'm stuck on my BUUSD email every single day, trying to get messages and answers and answer questions to people. So I think this gives us some kind of guidelines to that and helps kind of remind people that we are here, we are elected officials, but we have outside obligations as well.
Thanks, Sarah. The other thing that I would say is I appreciate the perspective that it may seem like these are rules, but I was hoping that the intent would be for people to understand how the expectation, when they come to a board meeting, they get 2 minutes. The board's not going to necessarily respond to their questions or respond to their comments, and it's nothing personal, and to understand that when they come to a board meeting, to understand that posting something on a Facebook page does not does not require a response from the board. Your own personal posting on a front porch forum posting does not constitute engaging with the board. I just want to be very clear with the community about how to start a conversation, how to ask a question, how to file a complaint, how to open up a dialogue, request information, whatever it might be, because it seems like that is not very clear. And people, there are some people who are confused about that. The people who are here tonight, they are participating, they understand the process. They probably don't need a document like this, although it sounds like our expectations for getting back to people are, we're not living up to that. So we have work to do. And so I would ask that we consider this as sort of guidelines so that the community understands, you know, that we all do have full-time jobs and that this is another job on top of our full-time jobs, and that we are just using this as guidelines so that they can understand how to engage with us. And I think it's probably even more difficult at this point in time, just because of, you know, like everything else, we are dealing with living in the time of COVID. We don't have public meetings. There's not, you know, there's not the school concerts where you're going and sitting down and maybe someone comes up and talks to you about something. We're not having those kinds of abilities to dialogue with people on a more one-to-one basis. And so I think this may help people who want to reach out, want to engage with us, want to open a dialogue, and it gives them the opportunity to understand how to go about doing that. So I appreciate the concern that it may intimidate people, and I certainly hope that that's not the case. I don't think we're an especially intimidating bunch, so I hope that they would reach out if they have questions or concerns. With that, are there any other questions or comments? If not, there is a motion on the table to approve and finalize this document. So I will look for all those in favor to signify with a thumbs up. Guy? Yes. Abby? Yes. Alice is thinking. I'll come back. Chris? Yes. Sarah, yes. Tim, I think Tim left. He may be coming back. Renee, yes. Gina, yes. Okay. Alice, you're going to vote no. Okay. So we have one person not present. We have 6 people voting yes and 1 person voting no. Okay, so the document has been approved. Thank you all very much. We will make the change to the dialogue spelling, and we will get it posted on our website and do our very best to hold ourselves to the expectations. And I apologize that we have not replied to Terry's email, so I will also put that on my to-do list. Chris Parker.
Just one other edit on that third bullet, just for symmetry. We need an underline there under state deadlines and rules also.
I noticed the same thing. I wondered if those other 2 are links
to
open meeting law and Robert's Rules of Order, because I thought the same thing and I started to underline it and then I thought maybe that's a link, but I will ask the question.
Okay, I only looked at it in the printed packet. I didn't try to click on it virtually.
Same thing. So I'll ask about that. Thank you for that. Okay, so moving on, we now are at 6.2, the superintendent timeline search update. 6.2.1 is the AOE request to open the search. There's a letter in your packet. I don't know, is Carol here? Carol, there you are. Hi, Carol.
I'm here. Hi, I'm here.
So would you just like to, we have to submit this before we can start a search, I'm assuming?
We do. This is the first formal piece of the search. So we just need the board to authorize you to sign this letter.
Okay.
And then also tonight I have the job description in there. So I will need approval on that. If not tonight, then sometime fairly soon.
Okay. Alice?
The sentence that says Christopher Hennessy, our current superintendent, I think we should indicate that it is an interim superintendent.
Well, it says was hired on an interim basis. Is that okay?
I think for my purposes it is, but I can change the word
Could we
easily.
switch the interim basis to the qualifier interim superintendent? Because
Okay, so
our current superintendent would indicate that that is the position, and when the position is really interim superintendent.
So how is the sentence going to read? Because I'd like to make sure we are all on the same page before we vote on it.
Put the period after 2021 and drop interim basis, put interim in front of superintendent. So it reads Christopher Hennessy, our current interim superintendent, was hired on July 1, 2021.
Okay, so Christopher Hennessy, our current interim superintendent, was hired on July 1, 2021.
Right, because that really is the official title. The official title is interim superintendent.
Okay. Okay, so I would look for, thanks, Alice. I would look for a motion to approve the letter as amended.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thanks, Alice. And is there a second? Chris Parker? Okay, thanks, Chris. Any more discussion, comments, questions? Okay.
And they're authorizing the board chair to sign said letter.
Yes, my name is on it, so I assume so. Can Alice and Chris, are you okay with amending the motion to include that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, all those in favor signify with a thumbs up. Guy? Awesome. Abby? Yes. Alice? Yes. Chris? Yes. Sarah? Yes. Tim? Yes. Renee? Yes. Gina? Yes. Okay, the letter has been approved. I will stop down to sign it. And okay, next on the agenda is the review and approval of the superintendent job description. I'm going to make the recommendation that we do not take action on this tonight because as I was reading it, it refers to school in the singular throughout the entire document. And the superintendent is in charge of multiple schools. And I think it's just a holdover. So I just feel like that needs to be replaced. And it's a lot to take into consideration. On the first page alone, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 references to school, '(s) or the school. So it feels like that should be changed. It's obviously not going to dramatically change the content of the document, but.
And it makes it consistent with the opening line. That, the head of schools and departments of the district.
Yes.
So then it becomes all contiguous.
Yes. Are there any, because we could put this on our next agenda, Carol. I'm just going to ask, are there any other questions or comments or concerns about the document that need to be taken into consideration before Alice?
Well, could we approve it with pending the edits? That edit?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
So the only other question I have, I guess if someone wants to make a motion, I can give you my question. If someone wants to make a motion to approve,
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Alice. And a second?
We approve this letter pending this
job description.
Job description pending the edits.
Yes. Okay. Is there a second? Gina? I think Gina got her hand up before Abby. Okay, so my other question is, there is a reference to mission, vision, core values, but the other concern I have is that we have a document that has strategic goals, and when we first created this, we did not, and it feels like that should be included. We approved it as a board. The superintendent would be the person that would be primarily responsible for helping us to reach those strategic goals. And I feel like it should be included as well. I don't know. I don't necessarily have a suggestion about how to do that, but I just bring it to your attention because it feels like it should be included. I recognize that it's it's sort of part of everything that's included here, but I think we should specifically mention strategic goals. Alice?
Well, the number 1F, which says develop shared understanding of and commitment to mission, vision, and core values with it, we could just add that right in there. Mission, vision, or strategic plan, including the mission, vision. It just goes right in that letter F there. We don't need a whole big description of the strategic plan.
No, I don't think we should have a description of the strategic plan. Right. And this also says develop, advocate, and enact a shared mission, vision, and core values. We don't really need to develop that because we have developed a mission and a vision, and we have developed a strategic plan. We really just need the superintendent to advocate and enact the shared mission. We really don't need more development. Would you agree with that?
Well, a shared understanding would be for not only staff, students, parents, and the community. So that's sort of an ongoing that you're developing that you're constantly developing that understanding so that people can renew that.
I'm sorry, Alice. I was talking about just the number 1 itself, not the F, 1F. I was talking about the first number 1. It says develop, advocate, and enact a shared mission. We don't really need develop, is what I'm saying.
Oh, well, just take develop out then. Because we already have it.
So could I recommend instead of adding strategic goals to the F, could we just add it to number 1? Could we say advocate and enact a shared mission, vision, strategic goals, and core values of, that doesn't even make sense.
Well, see, the values of high quality education is what number 1 refers to. Letter F is what is a component of that action. You've got the goal, and then you've got the objective.
Gina?
I might be saying something similar-ish to Alice, which is if you said in D, strategically develop, implement, and evaluate actions to achieve the vision and strategic goals for the district. So adding strategic goals into the into one of like the sub bullets.
Okay, so as I'm reading it, there's in this number 1, there's a lot of developing, and develop an educational mission is 1A. B, in collaboration with members of the school and the community and using relevant data, develop and promote a vision for the school. So there's another for the school on the successful learning and development of each child and on instructional and organizational practices that promote such success. So it seems to me that this, even if it's just this first section, may need to be overhauled. Renee?
Yeah, it sounds like so there might be quite a bit of wordsmithing and language that might be challenging with this. So what I'm wondering is, and I don't know if we're allowed to do this or not, but if this could be put into a Google Doc and we could all make comments and then come back and discuss the comments instead of trying to wordsmith it all here. I don't know if that would be helpful or not.
It's a good question. I'm not sure if we're allowed to do that because it may violate open meeting law, but I can check. We can withdraw the motion. Sarah?
Along with the wordsmithing, I think we really need to remove school and use district.
Okay. So Alice, I'm going to ask if you'd be willing to withdraw the motion because it sounds like there's more work to be done than just replacing school with schools or school with district.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. My other suggestion would be that if we have access to this document to read and individuals just have their suggestions, they could email them to the human and build a stronger job description with that, because that's what human resources does.
Okay. Okay, so did you say yes, you would withdraw the motion? Okay, perfect. So we're going to not approve this tonight. And I will figure out if we can do a Google Doc or if we should just operate in some version of what Alice has suggested where we email Carol to make revisions. But let me do some homework to figure out if we can use a Google Doc and if that's okay with open meeting law. As long as we're not discussing, if we're just making suggestions, it's kind of, I'm not sure. So I'll have to figure that out.
Well, that's kind of what I was shooting for, Sonia, is if we just make suggestions, but then we come back together to actually make the decisions.
Okay, awesome. Next is I have to go ahead, Alice.
And this will be on the agenda for the next meeting?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Just want to be sure of that.
Carol, go ahead.
I have this on the agenda, and I also, next week, I will have the official charge for you to look at, not to approve yet, but to look at, and it'll have a date that we're going to finish this up, which I'm hoping to have. I'm shooting for 12/9 to get you finalist candidates. It makes it tight, and there's a holiday involved in there, but that's what I'm shooting for. And so next week, I'm coming with the draft of the screening committee in charge and to talk to you about how we're going to choose the people, family, students, if we're going to have students on the committee, community members, parents. So we have to, I think last time we had people just write a letter to the board chair and then you just chose at one of your meetings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We are going to go into roundtable and I'm going to ask, I have a kitten that's going to get really difficult here. So I have to go I'm going to ask Alice to take over roundtable. I'll be back in a minute.
Deposed by a cat. Huh. Okay, we're going around the table here. Let me just get my list up here so I know who to call on. All right. Sarah, anything for around the table?
I've got nothing this week.
Okay, thank you. Gina? Anything? Gina's not there. Hello, Gina? All right, we'll move on and maybe if Gina pops back in. Renee, anything? No? Okay. Who else have we got? Gina. Abby? Anything? Where's Abby?
I have nothing for today.
Okay. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Sonia, anything?
No, I'm back. Thank you, Alice.
All right. And I have nothing. And 2, 3, 8. We're missing a Guy. Anything?
Thank you, Alice. I have a couple things. One is just kind of a communication thing based on either our last meeting or the meeting before, where we were talking about budget development. And this is no knock on anybody who said anything, but I just want to give you some feedback about, what I heard, which was, the words of, we're going to be meeting with people to see what their increases are. And I had people say to me, wait a minute, you're talking about increases when you've got a $3.2 million surplus. And so I just want to put that in perspective. I'm not saying I'm advocating for one way or the other, but I'm just saying that's kind of the message that, that people received. Just the other thing is I spoke to Chris about this, but I got a message from an Allen Street residents about, the lack of signage about our new C program, the fact that, people don't, and I know we're getting ready to do an open house and stuff, but a lot of people don't even know that's a school. And so there was some concern about, the lack of sidewalks and kids walking up the street and that type of thing. And I know Chris is aware of that. And I just appreciate the person, speaking out about that. The other thing is I really appreciate the parents sharing their experiences tonight. And I appreciate Chris, what you said. I agree with you. I'm not sure I'd want to be a parent with a kid right now in the last couple of years. I mean, in the words of my colleague, and I won't mention who it is, it sucks. And I also want to share that, we have some board members who are part of other districts, and I really appreciate you guys sharing your experiences from other districts to make us a better district. So I just want to say that, you really bring that talent to us. So I just want to say I appreciate that.
Thanks, Guy. Was that everybody, Alice? That's everyone. Awesome. Okay. No, Sarah's like, nope. Did I miss somebody?
I didn't get called on and Tim didn't get called on.
Go ahead, Chris.
I don't have anything, so it's fine.
Okay. Tim,
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Me
Tim.
neither.
All right.
Me neither.
Sorry. I apologize. I had to be taken care of. I'm sorry to just throw that on you, Alice. Okay. Other Chris Hennessy, is there anything else you'd like to add for roundtable?
Thank you for asking, but no, I'm all set tonight.
Okay. All right, then we will move on. Future agenda items. I did want to be sure to note that we will be having a listening session at our next board meeting regarding surplus funds. That will be on October 14th. We will have some items that will require action. It may be new hires. It will be a small part of the agenda, and then we will have a listening session and make sure we get the information out to the community that we will be discussing surplus funds so that we can get input and feedback about those surplus funds. So that will be happening. Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you said our next board meeting. Do we not have a board meeting until October 14th?
That's correct. And I had to do the math. I was like, wait a minute, because I was thinking about it like bi-weekly payroll. It's not like that. It's the second Thursday of the month and the fourth Thursday of the month. And so because there are 5 Thursdays in September, you get there's an extra week. So it's the second Thursday in October. I was also like I was struggling with that. Andrea?
So just to recap, what I have is you're going to be having the listening session regarding the surplus funds.
Yes.
We also had to discuss committee structure, review and approve the superintendent job description, and review of the official charge.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I have to talk to Chris Hennessy about that. I'm not sure if we will be able to do all of that and a listening session. So we'll have a discussion as we flesh out that agenda. If those are not included on October 14th, they will be included on the October 28th agenda.
Shall we mark them TBD, to be determined?
Yeah.
Just so that Tina doesn't, yeah, okay. We'll do that.
Chris and Tina and I will work together to figure out what's the right amount of board work that we can get done with balancing with the listening session. So
can I add something, Sonia?
Yeah.
When we did our ESSER fund community forum in the Spalding Auditorium, we even with not too many people there, we having a brief presentation, giving a chance for people to talk and ask questions. It was about an hour and a half, and I think we really want to make sure we give enough time for this, and in publicizing it, really making a big deal of the structure of it, how it's going to work, and all that. So if we can figure out, my suggestion would be if we can figure out a way to prioritize what maybe could wait till the 28th, I think is the next one, we do that just so that we can give it enough time for people to jump in.
I'm exactly on the same page. So we'll work together to figure out what that looks like, and anything that does not make it onto the agenda on October 14th will be included on October 28th. Andrea?
So do you not want me to list these things, or just list them all as TBD?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay. And something that I just wanted to give you a heads up on, it's been in the parking lot. It's the Articles of Agreement, and it's going to come up on you faster than you think.
Yes.
And I did check today, and the state's website does not have the BUUSD's correct Articles of Agreement posted, because what they have out there says that the board is composed of a total of 4 individuals. It's something old, and I'm not sure, but what is on our website is my understanding of what was correct, has 9 board members, but is listing the petitioning in the way that is problematic to the town and city clerks. So I think that's going to take some legal research, and you might want to look at it sooner rather than later.
Yes, we can definitely do that. It doesn't necessarily have to come to the board, but we do need to start working on it. So I can have a conversation with Chris about that. Alice? You're on mute, Alice.
Okay. I would just like to suggest that as you're doing your prioritizing for what should go on to an agenda, that those things that require a significant amount of expediency be considered first to go on the next agenda, so that we can get those. If we need to get the announcement out, if we on the superintendent's search, if we need to get the job description reviewed, that those things that have a more pressing timeline should go on our next meeting.
Yes, I agree. But at the same time, if something is going to be a long discussion, then I don't want it to take up time from the listening session. So that's where it's going to be a delicate balance. So we'll try to figure that out. And yes, I completely agree with you, Alice.
Yeah, but the ESSER funds will be there. We'll be working with them for a long time, but we really need to have the superintendent search up front. That would be my observation.
Well, right. But we do have deadlines as well with the surplus funds. So we have to be mindful of that as well. Guy?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Jody, but at some point, I think there needs to be a presentation about the governance finalization of the document and stuff. So I'm not quite sure when that happens, maybe early November, late October. Jody, you want to speak to that, or?
I know Sonia has me on the agenda for the 28th for the governance update, but one important component is that lease that our lawyers are working on. Should we split to be able to stay in the same space? And I think that is more timely and may need to be on the next meeting.
There's a deadline on that. Am I right, Jody, for the end of October? So we don't want to
Yeah.
push that to the 28th, and it can't go into November. So that piece of it anyway.
Okay, so that has to be on the October 14th agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, so to be clear, Chris, you know what that is and you have a note so that we can make sure that it's on the October 14th agenda? Okay.
Got it from
Yes.
Jody at lunchtime today. Still
Okay.
in my pocket, Jody.
You may not be able to because of Pietro Lynn's schedule, but hopefully that can work.
Okay.
Okay, we can reach out to him and get him on the docket.
Okay. So with that, it sounds like our future agenda items are going to be listed. There are many, and we will do our best to balance what happens on October 14th, what will need to happen on October 14th with what can wait until October 28th. So moving on to number 9, our next meeting date, the regular board meeting is October 14th at 5:30. The next item is number 10, executive session. And we have 3 items for executive session. And because there is negotiations and a contract issue, I believe we definitely need 2 motions. Andrea?
I just wanted to step back for a minute. I just noticed that tonight's agenda said that the in-person option was at Berry City. And it looks like Chris is at the central office. So, and I did want to confirm, are you going to continue to hold the board section at the SU to keep everyone out of schools?
Yes.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And I will make sure that's on there as long as we're doing the meetings this way. I think when it was scheduled, monthly, we're going to go to each school, but that obviously isn't at play right
For now, that's probably not a good idea.
I also note that when you click on the calendar, it shows that you're following a schedule based on the policy. I can't remember the policy, and it has like which months at which school, but we should probably just take that out as well. I could shoot an email to Tina or we can talk about it before our next agenda. Thank you for that, Andrea. So Andrea, could you read that first motion that we need to pass?
Yeah, so
please.
Right now, because we have to officially announce it, there's 3 items being proposed for discussion executive session: employee compensation, employee contract issue, and negotiation updates. So the first motion would be that the board agrees to find that premature general public knowledge of the item proposed for discussion, specifically negotiations updates, would clearly place the Barry Unified Union School District at a substantial disadvantage should the discussion be public. And I don't believe the first 2 would qualify for that one.
Even though it's a contract issue?
Well, is it a contract with a specific employee? I mean, I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay.
So
maybe it just applies to the third negotiation.
I'm thinking it just applies to the third. But I mean, you could, if you feel that it would be safer to put them all in, we could.
No, it's fine. I mean, they're all going. We're going into executive session for all 3, but yeah, that really just applies to the third one, 10.3. Okay, so I'd look for someone to make that motion. Sarah, and a second. Chris Parker, thank you. And all those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Oh, I lost my list. Guy, yes. Abby, yes. Alice, yes. Chris, yes. Sarah, yes. Tim, not here. Renee, Tim, thank you. Renee, yes. Gina may not be here. Okay, so that motion passed. Now I look for a motion to go into executive session the items listed: employee compensation, employee contract issue, negotiations update. And we're going to invite in Chris Hennessy and Carol Merrill. Are we inviting anyone else in?
No, just Carol for the for 2 of the items.
For 2.
Quick question: do we need to set up a link for this? Should I do that now? I will do that right now.
Yeah, that would
Send
be
you
great.
guys an invite.
Okay, that was Sarah's question, I'm guessing. Okay, so I would look for a motion. I'll look for someone to make that motion to go into executive session. Sarah. Thanks, Sarah. In a second.
Second, Guy.
Thanks, Guy. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Guy, Abby, Alice, Chris, Sarah, Tim, yes, Renee, and Gina. Perfect. Andrea?
I just want to confirm that Carol is only going in for 10.1 and 10.2. Are those the 2?
Carol's actually going in for 10.2 and 10.3, but we're going to switch the order when we get in there so that she can leave.
Okay. I just needed to know which 2 she's in.
Yes, so she's going to join us for 10.2 and 10.3, and then but we're going to take them out of order.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we are in executive session. Chris is sending us a link.
I'm going to stop recording now. As soon as are we adjourned?
Well, we're not adjourned, but we're going. Yes, we're in executive.
When after adjourn, then it might take a minute. So if everybody needs to hit the bathroom, and I'll send the invite in just a second.
Sounds great. Okay.
And Guy, you'll send me the follow-up, I'm sure, for the closeout.
David Delcor.
You expect any action?
I don't think so. I can't remember what 10.2 is though, so I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think so.
Right. And while I've got you, I'd requested a copy of David Wells' employment contract a couple of months ago from Carol, and she said she needed to clear that with you. And I don't know whether the communication never happened or did or whatever, but I've sort of let it go, but here it is again. So
okay,
renew that request.
Sure.
And so are you clearing it?
I'll talk to Carol and I'll get back to you.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear. I mean, I'll ask for every administrator in the district's contract if you want to make me ask formally,
No.
All right, cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so are we good? And we're going to go into executive session and you're going to stop recording though, right, Chris?
When you give me the green light.
Yeah, I think you can stop. I'm going to run to use the restroom and we'll see you in executive session.
I'll send the invite in just a second.
Okay, thanks all.